photograph on the site of the castle.
And it was the first time the Beatles had really stopped being semi-professional almost.
Look at that. Absolutely fascinating. That's what you do. You buy these clothes that cost money and make a difference in it. But we never do that.
Never complains, gets up, gets on with a smile on his face.
You just want you to sit in your chair and go hip hip hooray for the Western press and the Western narrative. You dare dictate me the same old every single day without this. If you haven't seen it before, please watch the first series, the first 2 episodes, the second series. Stallone.
Gary Rigby. Hello everyone, Frank and guests. Are you Gary? Paul Turner. Even a Frank, hope you're okay. Cold's one today in the city. Yes. I haven't been out. Tony, Paul. Tony LFC. Even a Frankie, 2 pints. Please. I was gonna have I've got cornettos, you know, in the freezer, and a couple of, I forget what you call them. So I was going to have one today, and I went, oh, it's too cold.
Oh, yes.
No, not going to. Tony LFC. Hello, Anthony. And 2 Scotch.
Hiya, Tony. Scotch is well needed.
Today it is. Evening, Anthony. Hope you're okay, says Paul Turner. And Tony LFC, a cup of coffee for you, Derek. Hello, Derek. He knows the scores, doesn't he, Tony? A beer for me, Scotch for Dave. Anthony, and a cup of coffee for you. It's crazy, isn't it? I'm going to go straight to this, lads, if you don't mind. I think this is one of the most, in my opinion, the most iconic album cover ever done. Hang on a minute. Let's. I'm sorry there. I missed out too. Paul Turner. Evening, Derek. Hope you're okay.
Hi. Fine, mate. Cheers. And yourself?
And the vlogs. Hello, everyone. Just a quick one. Is Jota in short? I can't remember. Just not seeing him a feature for Portugal at all. Can't even remember if he's injured. Oh, come on, vlogs. What a night. Well, look at us, what a night. This is a total different show. This is the history, and this is the music show as well. And anyway, I'm going to bring this on. I'm sorry about that, vlogs, but and there's and you know what it is?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. I hope you can help me out. Can you see where I'm pointing, by the way, Derek? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
See that picture there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any idea who that is?
Not offhand.
I don't know, you see. For years I've been there are three people I'm thinking of who they are. One is Percy Bysshe Shelley. Yeah.
Could be Shelley.
The other, because he does look remarkably like him, is the Duke of Wellington. And the other is a
Well,
port.
it'd be Shelley, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Gary Rigby, isn't he wonderful, Gary? Let me get him. Look, it's Aubrey Beardsley.
History. Yeah. The
Aubrey
illustrator.
Beardsley, what a man he is. I'm
Yeah.
talking about Mr. Gary Rigby.
Well, ain't Gary?
That's brilliant. Thanks, Gary.
This is the most complex cover, but
Yeah.
the thing that strikes me most is after all of these years, one of the artists who created what we're looking at is never mentioned, which is the then wife of now Sir Peter Blake.
Yeah.
And this lady, and a surname will come to me, Jan is her name. Her father was a Hollywood set builder, Grammy Award, Oscar Award winning, and she grew up around the complexity of building sets for movies. And she worked with Marilyn Monroe and all these people when she was a kid, so she wasn't fazed by fame. And basically, long story short, she came to England to study in our then School of Art, which was Slade School of Art, which wasn't a great experience for her. And if you can imagine a woman in the 1950s, 1960s, they were in every single occupation dominated by gentlemen. It was a man's world, and it still is to a degree, and certainly in the arts. And she long story short, she found her way through her art, which was sculpting life-size foam, or as we would call soft toy figures of people. And there's a couple of them in the picture. Shirley Temple is one.
Yeah.
And she also was commissioned by London Council in the 60s to design flower beds. And when she discussed the idea, because she was put in the frame by a gallery owner who knew her work and suggested to the Beatles, McCartney in particular, that they go for her and her husband, Peter Blake, to design this cover. And so she gave them all the ideas she had. She brought her father in, and he suggested what we're looking at now, that kind of three-dimensional tier system of cutouts. And she said, rather than having a graphic designer put type all over everything, which is the way, why don't we do it subtly with a drum skin? And she got the guy to build a drum skin and the flower bed. That was all approved. And history, as we know, because we're on the history show, history has a habit of being rewritten by certain people, whether you're Robert Cecil or whether you're Paul McCartney. And at some point, McCartney has said it was all his idea. And he wrote it down on a scrap of paper on the back of a plane. And that's what he said, that's what we want and that's what we're getting. Which kind of totally sidelined Jan from her work. And also, what's just happened recently is that they found a scribble by John Lennon, which depicts that, what we're looking at. So it looks to me like Lennon had this idea to say, will it look like something like that? And they've worked on that. But over the years, Paul McCartney and Sir Peter Blake have kind of commandeered this. This lady, particular lady, won a Grammy Award for the design of it with Peter Blake. when it came out, 67. And it just struck me as another part of Jericho know better than us. But the unfortunate part of music is that when the great realm of history is if they take your name off the label or the song or the album cover, then there's no way back. And I read about her, and she's a remarkable woman. And I wish I had more of her work to show you, but she designed at least what I would regard as, she hand coloured all of the cutouts.
Okay, well, we've got some very famous people on there. Now, I'm wondering, got Diana Dawes, the lovely Diana Dawes, who was one of the most underrated actresses.
That's right, yeah.
Very underrated. But also you've got Sonny Liston, as you can see there, the heavyweight champ of the world at the time. Everybody was terrified. You've got one of my great people is Oscar Wilde as well. And also who you've got is this fella. I'm going to mention a few lads there. Have you got any idea who he is? I know who he is.
Lord Channing?
No. I'll surprise you if you don't know. I'll surprise you.
No,
it shocked me when it first came out, actually, when I seen it. Because I remember this. But what I want to know is this. Have you any idea? We look at the Beatles. We look at Lennon. Lennon was an intellect. Not getting away from that. He was an intellect, that man. And when you look at them, did they pick out these people?
Yeah, they picked quite a few of them. John Lennon actually wanted Jesus and Hitler on there, and possibly Stalin, but they never made the final cut. There are mock-ups, I think, that do show Hitler, because they're plastic, they're cardboard cutouts, aren't they? It's not a photograph, collage.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think Paul McCartney did have quite a hand in how this was going. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, I've just been looking away. One of the inspirations came from a Swedish band, and I can't for the life of me remember their name. And they've got a cover of an EP that is not dissimilar to this. That goes back to about '64. And the idea of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was because at the time, because we're now in 1967,
the
whole music world is changing dramatically from the beat groups. The rock bands are just starting to have their first hits in very late '66, early '67. Psychedelia's on the way, and a lot of bands had longer names like a Big Brother and the Holding Company that Janis Joplin was a part of. And that was part of the idea for the whole Sgt. Pepper. And of course, you've got several clues on this album, so-called clues to the fact that Paul McCartney was no longer with us and that he'd been replaced by an imposter called Billy Shears.
Yeah.
And in the intro into the Joe Cocker song, Little Help from My Friends, there's actually a reference to Billy Shears in that. And on the front cover there, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute any of this is true, but the conspiracy theory guys who believe that Paul had been replaced by an imposter, one of the clues is the second set of Beatles there, the ones in the suits. They're all looking down in a sort of solemn way, as if they're looking sort of at the Beatles, where the name is, as though that's an open grave. As though that's a grave and they're paying respects. And on the back cover, it's interesting. There's an image of the band in the middle of the sleeve, and Paul McCartney's the only one with his back to the camera. and he's standing with his head, because the unusual for the time, the lyrics were all printed on the back cover. It's a gatefold. And his head is directly underneath the title of the song, Within You, Without You. And, there are numerous other audio clues as well, supposedly, on the album. It took them, they were in the studio for about 400 hours when they were making this. When you think, they more or less knocked the first album off in a day or so. Life had changed. The other staggering thing, I think, is that this album was recorded on 2 4-track tape recorders. When you think about the 2004 track machines running today, absolutely astounding what they achieved with technology well ahead of behind where recording technology is now.
The genius of George Martin, really, wasn't it, Derek?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's fascinating that his background before the Beatles was nothing to do with pop music. He made the odd Charlie Drake single, so novelty singles, but his background came in jazz, and particularly in classical music and humour. Yeah. And I think that's just such a part of the Beatles sound. It can't just be coincidence. I think it would have been a very different group without George Martin. I really do. I think he's a very important factor in how their songs became so sophisticated.
I totally agree. I don't think they would have been signed if it wasn't for him, because they've been knocked back 3 times by other kind of members of AMI. He was the last label, wasn't he? So,
yeah.
Well, I'm looking at another monitor, to be honest, rather than the smaller picture. That's why I'm over here. So I'm not being ignorant. And I'm pointing out this fella here. That's Stuart Sutcliffe, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like. Yeah.
No, I'm going to ask, seeing that you don't know who this fella is, I'm going to ask the lads and girls on there.
Okay, yeah.
They know who he is. As I said, when that came out, I was shocked that they had him up there. Shocked. I'll shock you as well if you don't know who it is.
If I can just drop that lady's name in while we're here, the lady who was married to Peter Blake at this is Jan Hayworth.
Okay.
Jan Hayworth, and you can Google her. She's still active now. She moved back to the States. Her father was a absolutely out there #1 set designer for all the Hollywood movies, and her daughter and Peter Blake's daughter are still active in the art scene. But it's just unfortunate that she doesn't really get any credit.
Recognition, yeah.
Yeah.
So who picked it? That's all. Who picked them? Who picked these people?
The Beatles were asked to give a list, weren't they, Derek? Something like that.
Yeah, I think the suggestions came from a bunch of places. I mean, the Brando shot there, or image there, looks very much from the Wild Ones film, which is, they were called the Beatles, his biker gang in that film, and that's one of the supposed origins for the name of for the Beatles.
Yeah. I remember reading that the Beatles themselves were asked to submit a list of people who weren't included, but they kind of quickly got bored with that. And some of the people they couldn't really use, and some of them they had to approach the estate of all these people and get permission for their likeness. I don't think that happened, but I know at the very, very back there is Edgar Allan Poe, who is a favourite of Lennon, and appears in some of the tracks and stuff. Not on this album, but and this is where the myth that John Lennon was a football fan and he supported Liverpool came from.
Albert Stubbins, yeah.
Yeah, the name Albert Stubbins. Now, John just apparently chose the name because he loved the sound of it. You know, Marlon Brando, you've got Shirley Temple, you've got all these greats on Albert Stubbins. And he could just imagine everyone going, who? What?
Yeah, exactly. I think well, I did myself, you know, Albert Stubbins on there, you know.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even know Albert Stubbins. I knew it that he played for Liverpool. Never ever seen him though.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised. And one of the surprises, you know, I did get, I'm being honest, I've mentioned him before, this chap here. Who's that?
It's like Oscar Wilde, isn't it?
It is Oscar Wilde. And I love Oscar Wilde.
Oh,
But isn't it strange the way he picked out Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan?
Yeah. They were all icons of the time, weren't they?
Yeah.
We see Fields in the background there. I think one of the funniest people ever to walk the face of the earth. And Bob Dylan, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because Lennon went through a Bob Dylan phase, didn't they?
Yeah.
They fell in love with the freewheeling Bob Dylan album.
Yeah. And what about, I tell you another face, you know, we all love Marilyn Monroe.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But this fella here, Tony Curtis,
Yeah.
I wonder who picked him and why. Right, okay, let's go on to a few things. Judge Red says a couple of the Dead End kids on there, the Beatles must have been big fans. He says that.
Yeah, apparently, I can't remember which one. One of the Dead End kids they approached wanted, I think it was about $400, and they refused to pay him, so he didn't end up on the sleeve.
You're joking, he wants a 400.
Apparently.
Go away. I remember him. He was like the leader. I forget his name now.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That fella. He's a Dead End kid. The Bowery Boys. Because we used to watch them when we were kids, and that's why I was thinking the likes of Johnny Weissmuller, you know, Tarzan, the likes of whoever he is, that cowboy, if you know what I mean. The likes of Mae West. Now, what I was thinking of, and I think that's Clara Bow, whatever her name is, and Laurel and Hardy, obviously. You know, these two fine gentlemen. And what I was thinking of, we grew up with them, didn't we? We grew up with them, and I'm wondering if they included them from their childhood.
Absolutely. I think so, yeah. It becomes a cultural thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
Youth thing. And that's definitely what they would have been following, listening to. Yeah.
Well, Gary says C.W.C. Fields at the back, and Alistair Crowley.
Yeah.
And Paul Lynch says, hiya, Frank and guest. Sorry I won't be with you all tonight. Just back from the hospital, frozen.
Oh dear.
Frozen. They don't like footy, but Albert Stubbins got on there. That's right, Judge. That's right. Darryl, our friend Darryl. Evening, Frank and Anthony and Derek. Thank you.
Darryl.
Good evening, my fellow. What's he? I don't know whether that, you know, that's celebrities or what. I don't know. Anyway, there's a pint and scotch and everything else there. And is that Gandhi on the end? Yeah, that's Gandhi. That is it. That is him right there.
It was John Lennon's choice as well, apparently. I read somewhere.
Who would you say that is? This fella here?
I can't really make him out, to be honest.
Can you make him out? Definitely a 19th century.
Yeah. Well, you've got Karl Marx lurking in around
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah, he is. He is. Where is he?
Just to the right of the start.
There he is.
Yeah.
See, when you look at Lennon's private life and, what he was thinking and everything else, he was a great thinker, was Lennon. And that's what's taken away from him, if you know what I mean. When people talk about Lennon, he was a great thinker. And you can tell that's why, he's got him there. He's got Karl Marx there. He's also got Oscar Wilde as well. All these intellects he has. Edgar Allan Poe. Unbelievable people. But no one has still got this fella here. Anyone, any idea on chat?
There are templates floating around the internet on the websites and stuff that actually name all the names, like an outline of all the names of them. I've never really bothered downloading one over the years. I just love to look at it, and it is possibly the most iconic cover there is, in part because it's the Beatles, and musically, as Derek said before, it changed everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you who this is.
Go on.
Because we've got other things to talk about. Right. I'm sorry if I get his name. You're not going to believe it. But that fella killed a cop in the 60s. And they got him. They got him after I forget his name.
Is it Hanratty?
No, it's not Hanratty. This fella actually killed a policeman, a constable. I forget his name. I'm sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Does anyone know? But that's him. It's surprising. I was shocked, actually. I was shocked that he was actually, with all these great people, that he was actually put on there.
I think that's partly the intent, isn't it? To shock. That sounds like John.
Yeah, it does. Let's put him up there. And I don't know. It's a strange one, actually. It's a strange one. Daryl says, is that Oliver Reed? No, not Oliver Reed. Tom Mix says Judge Red. Don't know. Is that Tom Mix with the cowboy hat on? I don't think it is. I don't know. Could be. Having a clue. I just talk about, Hopalong Cassidy. But apparently it's Tom Mix who's the judge. Yeah, definitely not Hopalong. Used to watch him as Saturday matinees as a kid. Then run home, smacking our bums because we thought we were on horses. Right. I used to mow them all, but can't remember now, so he's Gary Rigby.
Yeah, it's out there on various sites and stuff.
Yeah, I've actually got a copy of one of those that tells you exactly who everyone is. So what I can do, Frank, I'll via Jason, I'll send you a link to it, a copy of it, and it just tells you who everybody is.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. The bug-eyed guy looks like a horror movie character.
Yes. He looks like
I think
Lon.
Lon Chaney is on there somewhere.
I think he means him, you know. I think he means him.
He does look familiar.
No, he's a murderer. He's a murderer, him. Roberts. Harry Roberts. Harry Roberts. Yeah, I just got it then. And there's Derek. Darryl.
Yeah.
You're spot on there, mate. Now, why do you think he has him on? Harry Roberts? Because he was the most wanted. And it shocked me, you know. It shocked me when I first seen it.
It's kind of a dampener now, isn't it? I mean, we're all talking quite enthusiastically about the cover, and then to drop that seed, and you think, what is that doing on there?
Yeah.
It goes beyond. It's not funny or witty, is it? It's just shocking.
Look, says, where's Charles Autry? And I'm sure Charles Autry was on there, you know, but nothing's been deleted, nothing at all, but I just can't find
I mean, that was a line that Lennon used in the Let It Be sessions when he announced one of the songs.
Yeah, actually, from one of the mock-ups, I can't remember who it was now, but on that very back row, in the middle, sort of above the bass drum, you can see a space, and there was originally another head there. That might have been the Hitler one, I can't remember, but they did remove somebody from one of the earlier takes.
Do you mean there?
There, exactly there, yeah. I mean, that is not an accidental space. That was a head that was removed.
Yeah.
Get if it was offhand.
That's absolutely brilliant, though. You know, the amount of work. Any idea what? All right, that's just a doll. Welcome to whatever it is. What's that? You mentioned that before, Anthony. See that? What that woman did? What is it? Who is it? Is it supposed to be a person?
These are like, well, the lady Jan, her thing was to make that, we would call them soft toys now, but she'd make them in a realistic way, like a bench, stuff like that. And I think some of those props were used to pack the original concept out, and then as everything else was printed out in black and white, and then she coloured them. Yeah, it would be interesting when when you and Derek get together, and if you get one time, we should put up the kind of the outline and the names of all of the individual people involved in it. I mean, the guy who did the drum skin, his name is out there as well. His thing was to decorate gypsy caravans, and that's when he got the commission to do the drum skin, again from this lady.
Fantastic. I feel Fanny Craddock. Fanny Craddock's not on there, is she?
She might be, actually.
Could be in there.
Yeah, and Fred Astaire in the middle. Yeah, see Fred. That's what I was going to ask you, Terry. Fred Astaire on there, right? Yeah. Now, I was only watching. As I said, I play music, the videos and whatever. And John Lennon, I forget what song it is. To be honest. And he's just in a room, like a hotel room or whatever. And he walks, the door opens. He's singing. You don't see him singing, but he's just singing, if you know what I mean. And in walks Fred Astaire with Yoko, and George Harrison with Yoko as well. Afterwards, the door keeps open, and one of them Smother brothers, keep walking in, and some other people who, I suppose, I don't know, but some Americans. And Fred Astaire was on that video that John made, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, you know, were the great admirers, you know, of Fred Astaire, because to me he was the most elegant dancers ever.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Paul McCartney's dad was a professional musician in a dance band, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, you know, there might be some sort of background there. I dare say McCartney would have been exposed to a lot of that kind of music when he was younger.
I think a lot of it is the fame thing as well.
Yeah.
Stuff like the Grammy Awards and stuff where celebrities are put together, you know, and they become friends, you know, sitting on the next table. I mean, the Beatles were all inspiring to celebrity as well as us mortals. Strange.
Well, the Anfield Roar, that's Frank, is that Tesla next to Fred Astaire? No, it's Edgar Allan Poe. It's Edgar Allan Poe, that.
Yeah.
The great writer, Edgar Allan. Let's see. Just let me read these, then we'll go on to the next one, okay? I mean, the next, whatever we're looking at. Frank, here's the fella with the yellow hat and red cheeks. That's Oliver Hardy.
Yeah.
Can I tell the people how Oliver, you know, Hardy, you know, he had siblings and that. Do you know how he got his name, Oliver?
No.
Shall I tell you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is a history, isn't it? You're going to love this, Derek. I bet you Derek, once the show finishes, he's going to go outside and do cartwheels and backward flips on the road and back again. So will you, Anthony. But you'll have to get Laney to help you.
Well,
I'll tell you how we got his name. And it goes right back. It goes right back to the Battle of Trafalgar. Right? And do you know when you see the portrait of Nelson and there's Hardy, as we look at it, Hardy is on the right.
Yeah.
Okay? But who's on the left? Shall I tell you who it is? And this is where Oliver Hardy got his name from. Because he was a relative, he was a descendant, Oliver Hardy, of Hardy.
All right.
wow.
Right? The fella on the left, when you're looking at him, because he's a Liverpool captain. He's a Liverpool captain. And he's there, you know, he's a very prominent man as well. And then his name was Oliver. Captain Oliver. So the descendant named Hardy when he was born, Oliver, after Oliver.
That's this guy.
What's that?
Wow. Never
That's
ever heard that. Wonderful.
You now know, because that's absolutely fact. Fact. Songs of Four. Paul could never give up the granny tunes, drawing on his childhood repertoire. Here you go, Songs for Four. He's just resting on his laurel.
Very.
But that's absolutely genuine, that, lads. And I'm going to go to this one. That was great, though. That was wonderful, that about... and that's William Blake.
Yeah.
And if you ever look at anything, have a look at the Book of Tell. The Book of Tell. And that's his drawing. They're absolutely, he was a great artist, besides one of my favourite ever poets.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar.
It's kind of grown with us, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you look at a piece like that and you see it on an album cover, because our generation really probably appreciated the album cover more than previous generations, or certainly since the 90s when it came CD format stuff. And that to me looks like a modern artist has created this thing. I think it's the beauty of his artwork is that it's timeless.
Yeah,
it is timeless, and that's why I'm a great admirer, not only of his artwork but also of his poetry.
Yeah.
He's on a couple of other albums as well. He's on a Bruce Dickinson album called Chemical Wedding. His Ghost of a Flea is that cover, and he's on Your Wobbles. They actually call the album inspiration of William Blake, and they used Good and Evil Angels on that one. So, you know, he's on 2 or 3. But I think the whole thing about this level of artistry on, this level of cover art is very much just didn't exist before the sort of mid 60s. It was very much the late 60s and the 70s, particularly because that's really when, you know, the whole prog thing was going on and the psychedelic thing was going on. And I think that inspired an awful lot of these bands to get some serious artists and graphic designers in to do the covers, because I mean they're absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then the old gatefold sleeves, these.
Yeah, I did come across some of his work on a classical album.
Absolutely.
Which again is kind of relevant, I guess, because there's so much atmosphere and dynamics in his work, but it's wonderful. But yeah, you could look at it. If you put the name Led Zeppelin on that, people wouldn't be phased.
Yeah.
Now wait, look at this lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the famous designers, graphic designers. He went to the Royal College of Art, graduated in '68, did his first album in '69 for a band called Gun, which it isn't there. And what happened was that around the sort of early '70s, his style became those very surreal landscapes, like the Yes tells some topographic oceans on the right hand side, and that gives sort of examples of the kind of thing he was doing, sort of almost graphic. The Atomic Rooster, that's one of the early ones, 71, and I just love that Osibisa one as well. Sort of flying elephant. Absolutely
almost sci-fi. Almost sci-fi. And I know the 70s and the 60s opened the doors, but the 70s gave us a blank canvas for where album covers were so important.
Yeah, Roger Dean really got himself into the futuristic landscapes. You know, check out bands like Budgie, Paladin. Oh, he also did one for the Keith Tippett group, and it's got one of the greatest album titles I've ever come across. Dedicated to you, but you weren't listening. I thought that was great. And when I checked out the musicians on there, it turned out Elton Dean was the sax player. And of course, I mean, that's one half of the origin of Elton John's name. Elton from Elton Dean and John from Long John Baldry. So I thought that was quite nice. And Robert Wyatt's playing the drums on that album as well. Sadly, he broke his back in a fall but he's a singer and a drummer. So after that, he just stuck to the vocals. But if you recognise any Uriah Heep albums, quite a lot of Uriah Heep and other Yes albums are very much produced by Roger Dean.
Yeah.
And Hypnosis would be another one of the big sort of graphic designers at the time. Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Powell were the founders of that in the late 60s. And of course, they did an awful lot of Pink Floyd albums, an awful lot. And I mean, two of the most iconic albums, you can ever get those two Pink Floyd albums. And
yes.
Interesting, they never put the name of the band or the name of the title on, which I thought was good fun. I mean, that's Dark Side of the Moon spent 736 consecutive weeks in the Billboard album chart. Absolutely astounding. And it was the first album where all the lyrics were written by Roger Waters, and that was that's 73, and that was when Floyd became a stadium band. And it was around the sort of 72, 73, particularly in 74, that the stadium started to be very much the fore for big bands.
Well, when you think about it as albums as art form, which is what they are, it was so hard for any generation really, but certainly in the 60s, with so many thousands of albums that were coming out per week, to do something different.
Yeah.
And late 60s into the 70s, we had what I would term as the creme de la creme of album cover designers, which is a really, really, really shabby way of saying tremendous artists, fantastic artists that are still remembered all these years later, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And the Animals.
Why do you think? Can I ask you there? You know, this one. I can't even point it out now. Battersea Power Station. Whose album was that?
That's Pink Floyd's Animals.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, there's only half a dozen tracks on it. Pigs on the Wing 1, Pigs on the Wing 2, Sheep, and the B-side was Pigs, 3 different ones. And probably the focus on Pigs came from the fact that when they were actually setting up the photo shoot for that, the pig broke free and glided gently into the airspace around Heathrow and actually disrupted air traffic for quite a while. It came to ground, I think in Kent somewhere in some farmer's field, and they brought it back and they used it again because that's an amalgam. I think the pig was shot on the 3rd day and the Battersea Power Station image is, I think, from the 1st day. But it's also got quite an influence later. When they toured Animals, they toured it with Wish You Were Here, and that was when they played a notorious gig in Montreal on the 6th of July 1977. And what happened was Roger Waters had never been a people's people person, really. And people were letting off fireworks and generally making a noise, not listening to the band at all. So Roger Waters was pretty unimpressed by this. And he thought, wouldn't life be great if we could just play and there was no audience? And what happened, it got really boisterous, and some guy in Montreal was climbing the railings near the stage, and Roger Waters actually spat at this guy. And this is very much the origins of the Wall concerts, the Wall album. The idea that the band can hide itself away behind a massive wall and play to the wall, as it were, and not have to interact with the audience. So the Animals album actually extended the Pink Floyd folklore beyond the loose pig into the Wall album. And I love that Hypnosis one with Caravan as well. They did a few Caravan albums, and that album's called Cunning Stunts, which I thought was quite good. I mean, they really were, when prog was really getting going. And if you look at the lineup for that particular album, you can see what prog was all about. I mean, Pi Hastings, one of the founding members, acoustic, electric guitars and vocals, pretty straightforward. Then Dave Sinclair, he played the acoustic piano, mini Moog, Fender piano, Freeman string synthesizer, not synthesizer, as in symphony, an organ and an electric organ. And Jeff Richardson played viola, electric and acoustic guitars and flute. Roger Coughlan, drums, percussion. And then I love Mike Wedgwood, fretless and fretful bass guitars, some congas and vocals.
Okay.
You don't often see fretless and fretful.
I've got to go to the break. But just before I go to the break, what's the big connection with this Battersea Power Station in Liverpool? Any idea?
I don't know. Actually, designed by a Liverpool architect.
No.
I don't know.
Nearly. I think that. But technically, you're right. What it was Giles Gilbert Scott, who designed the Anglican Cathedral, who also designed Battersea Power Station. And I'm going to go to the break. Will you stay with us, Derek? Because we've got more to do, you see.
Absolutely.
Excellent stuff. Well, that was all right, wasn't it?
Brilliant.
Frank with long hair. But that's about it. Anfield Rose says, I do feel what is missing from today's society is art in general, whether it'll be music or the art itself. Sad state of affairs. The magic of music back then was album covers.
Yeah.
It's everything about them.
Yeah. It was
Budgie had a great album cover.
Yeah.
Budgie.
Yeah.
Says Gary. And Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. That's what we was talking about there before.
the same guys, wasn't it? Hypnosis.
What you were talking about there before, Derek, that fella must have had some arms. I'm not saying that one there, yeah. Great show, that, Frank. Love the art. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Let's add more now to the thing. So we've had that one, right?
It's interesting. Some covers get withdrawn for various reasons. This is one of the American Capitol Records releases. It came out between Rubber Soul and Revolver. And what happened, the original artwork is on the left there. An Australian guy put that together, known as the Butcher cover, because they're dressed in white aprons, covered in dismembered dolls and chunks of raw meat. That lasted 5 days, and the outcry was so great from just everywhere that it was withdrawn within 5 days and replaced with the what's known as the trunk cover on the right hand side there. And all of these covers have implications on the Paul is dead and replaced by an imposter thing. One of the angles on the Butcher sleeve is the fact that Paul's the one with the two decapitated dolls, because the story has it that he was killed in a car crash and decapitated. And people suggest that if you turn that right-hand one, the trunk cover, through 90 degrees, to your left as it were, Paul looks as if he's lying in a coffin.
Yeah.
So much of this could be retrospective. But what's interesting is I delved into this in quite some depth for a particular show. And what's interesting is, when you look at all of these clues, they only ever refer to Paul. There's never any similar references to any of the other ones of them. But I mean, that's in America they put out a lot more albums than they did in the UK. They reuse tracks, they use singles and B-sides and all kinds of stuff.
Did the lads have any say? Because I think it's the first time I've ever seen that, to be honest. Did the lads have any say on that, you know, to be chunks of meat?
No, I don't necessarily would have come up with that as an idea. You know, whoever was the graphic designer for Capitol Records at the time obviously decided that was a good idea. The guy who set that up was a famous Australian photographer. I can't remember his name offhand. And you know, it just seemed to someone like a good idea at the time. What's interesting, when it was withdrawn, they didn't throw all those covers in the bin. They just took the trunk sleeve and pasted it over the original butcher sleeve. So if you got one of the early copies of the trunk sleeve, you could peel that off, and the other sleeves underneath. Obviously,
a lot of money.
Then they would just do another rub with the trunk.
I think it's horrible. I really think it's horrible. It's more like looking at it, to be honest.
No, I mean, that was a general opinion, and that's why it was withdrawn. Now this is Lynyrd Skynyrd. This was also withdrawn, actually within about 3 days, but for totally different reasons. When they released this particular album called Street Survival, that was on the left-hand side, standing amid the flames. That was the original artwork. Sadly, 3 days after that was released, they were on tour, and the plane crashed, reputedly ran out of fuel, and several of them were killed. And the guy standing in the middle there was Steve Gaines. He was one of the guitarists. He was killed in the crash. And if you look at that sleeve, he's standing slightly behind the other two, and he's actually engulfed in flames, you know, virtually head to toe. So that was withdrawn as a point of respect by MCA, and literally, you know, within days. And it was reissued with just the black somber cover, with obviously a different shot of the band taken from the photo shoot on the same day.
Yeah, because they've got all the same gear on, haven't they?
Oh yeah, it's obviously it's from the same shoot. A photo shoot like that, they take dozens, if not hundreds, of photographs, I would think. So quite sad. And this is one that was nearly withdrawn. This is the famous Nirvana Nevermind, and that's a sort of 3-month-old baby swimming underwater. And again, it's a famous underwater photographer that took that particular shot. The $1 bill there is on a fish hook. You probably can't quite see that. And the idea, it was Kurt Cobain's idea, and it was very much a dig at the industry, dissatisfaction with the record industry. But you can see quite clearly that the little baby's naughty bits, as it were, are really visible. And when the family saw this, they weren't very happy, but they found that, you know, for all kind of legal reasons, they couldn't hold it back or whatever. But the record label, Geffen, they apparently did mock up a copy, which either airbrushed it out or covered up with a sticker. But apparently, Kurt Cobain took a very dim view of this, because, you know, he felt it should stay as it was, you know, as nature intended, chasing the dollar and sending out a clear message as to what the sleeves are about. And apparently he only agreed to the change if on the record label there was a sticker in the appropriate spot. And this is what he's reported to have said. He'd only agreed to the sticker if it contained the words, "If you are offended by this, you must be a closet paedophile." They never put the sticker on. The album cover was never replaced. It went on to be one of the biggest selling albums of all time. It certainly put Kurt Cobain and Nirvana on the map.
But it does grab your imagination, doesn't it, really? You know, I would have been wondering what that particular dollar bill meant, you know, what it symbolised. I thought it would have been like, as you grow up, you know, money becomes greed. You know,
innocence chasing dollars, innocence chasing greed. I think absolutely right is what it is. But that guy, Spencer Eldon, he was a family friend of one of the senior executives. Is how he came to get that particular gig. But he did sue them in about 2021. He reckons it's caused him great, you know, pain and aggravation throughout his life because he became known as the Nirvana baby, and he effectively sued them for child abuse, but he got thrown out in about 2022.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well beyond statute of limitations. It was that's
just greed of money anyway. You know, if you're suing anyone because of it, that's in my opinion.
Yeah, this is another famous sort of graphic. Well, he's a cartoonist.
Well, this is the first time I'm seeing these, you know.
Oh, this is Janis Joplin. She joined Big Brother and the Holding Company. I think this is their second album. But Robert Crumb is a really interesting guy. You know, he's got a very distinctive style there. And I mean, on that track are things like Piece of My Heart, Ball and Chain, and Summertime. She does a fabulous version of Summertime. And he's also famous for creating Felix the Cat. I don't know if you remember that particular.
Remember Felix
a while ago.
Yeah.
And he also apparently influenced. Anthony, you might know this guy. A guy called Carl Barks, who's a famous Disney cartoonist. Apparently, was one of Robert Crumb's big heroes.
Robert Crumb, I think,
you can see that kind of graphic, can't you? In that.
There's also kind of in his work, which is freely available. You can buy it in books and stuff. I love Robert Crumb, but he's kind of a Robin Hood historian in that musically he goes back and he portrays the likes of the great Mississippi blues guys who were not heavily photographed, and their life stories were not really known to people. And he did a similar thing with them. I've got one of the books, Blues and Jazz, and he's a real passionate music fan, which comes across in his work, and his work is sensational. His famous thing of the 70s was a kind of walking figure, which was, I think, Keep On Trucking was the title, and this figure and adapted into so many graphic artworks. It's been heavily ripped off as
absolutely
most people who.
Can I ask the Cheap Thrills there, the cover thing? When was that done?
At 68.
Okay. Now, do you think there's a few there that wouldn't be allowed today?
I think there probably are, yeah.
There's definitely any. The likes of I Need a Man to Love, that one. Because that's giving you the image of women, you know, if you know what I mean. And the black girl.
Yeah.
You know, Summertime. I know that is Summertime, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like a black and white minstrel, which is totally banned.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot from this era that you'd struggle with nowadays. But it's interesting what you were saying then about Anthony, about him being well into the blues. When I was sort of just drilling down to find out which other covers he developed, this is the only really big mainstream one I came across. I came across this list of about 85 albums that he was responsible for the cover design for, and at least half of them, probably more, were blues artists, Robert Johnson's son, and all kinds of people, and some jazz, but a lot of blues albums he designed for, and a lot of compilation albums as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, as you say, he's an interesting guy. He used to, he had quite a bit to do with the Rolling Stone magazine, I think, as well.
And funny enough, a gentleman who shares that passion is Martin Scorsese, who does for film what Robert Crumb did in illustration, certainly for the blues. And this is one of my all-time favorite album covers. And when I was a kid, when I was 16 at art school, there was a massive hit song that was on every jukebox, wherever you want, called Samba Party, which is an instrumental, beautiful thing by Santana. And this was the cover of the album. Now, it took me years to get the album. When I got it at some point in the 80s, I loved the artwork. And then when I researched what we were going to be talking about tonight, I came across, that's the original painting, which was painted in 1961 by a guy whose name is abbreviated to Matti, who's a German artist, Jewish German artist whose family fled Germany in the Hitler years. Yeah, and he delved into art, and he hooked into the essence of the great 14th century Michelangelo's and Leonardo's and stuff, and that's what prompted a lot of his style. But this was the last kind of classic painting he did that tells a story. Now everything else he's done so many album covers, rather like Robert Crumb, but most of them are for jazz, Miles Davis, Richard Rue and stuff like that. His style changed to fit the time, which is the good and the bad thing about art. I mean, the story I heard about this is Carlos Santana was sitting somewhere, picked up a magazine, saw that image in it, and immediately wanted to use it for an album cover, which is common, I think, with a lot of bands. Atomic Rooster certainly would have, one of the guys would have been familiar with William Blake. You know, so it's like giving a second life to a piece of artwork.
Was there any, Andy, the black girl there? I'm sure I've read something about that, but I'm talking about years ago.
Yeah.
And the black girl, I think there was something controversial, not about her, you know, in the picture itself, but controversial that it was like she was exposed to other things.
Is he? Yeah.
I think she's a Brazilian girl, and I'm sure that she was about suing somebody. I'm sure I read that because that's the first time I've seen this album now.
It's a beautiful album. It's great. And it was I think it's the second album Santana did, and this was the album that launched them.
Yeah.
With that particular track. But if you look at the picture, there's like an angelic figure in the middle. It's all based on the old school of an angel Gabriel will appear and this and this and this. Historics, religious studies, which is surprising really. 1961 he did it as a piece of art, and then 1980 was when the album Santana released it. So Matty Carlyle, it's just it's a fantastic piece of music work, but as a kid in the generation of album covers, I would spend hours in record shops looking through, and there's like bookshops now really. If you want to sell a book, the best thing to do is put something original and clever on the cover.
Absolutely.
You know, so people
it's like social media today, which is you've got a load of clickbait.
Yeah.
And people go onto that, you know, and nothing gets mentioned about the clickbait. That's the headline, which I think is cheating people to come on. You know, like I do this. I just do this, but there's no clickbait,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. Because I don't like falsifying things, in other words, you know.
No. Well, some images pull you in.
That's right.
Yeah, of course.
And you're hooked then.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's a name of a band or a name of a book that you know the author of or whatever, then likelihood is you will buy it because you're attracted by what you see. And the same scenario is on TV and in movie. You know, we like what we like. And I know there's one of the pictures that I chose today that Derek has also chosen. So it'll be interesting to see.
Is that it?
This is the great Klaus.
Klaus Norman.
Yeah, from the Hamburg days.
And it was Lennon who apparently phoned him up and said, "Do you want to do our next album cover?" And Klaus Voormann, give him his due, said, "It's a bit scary because I'm not known as an artist anywhere outside of Hamburg. It's a bit scary. I don't know if I can do it." Lennon said, "I think you can do it." So Klaus said to him, "Can I come in and listen to the music?" Which you would do. You'd say, let me listen to what you're doing. So they were still recording stuff. And apparently he went in on the day they were recording Tomorrow Never Knows, which is one of the most, one of the first psychedelic, would we say, Derek? Yeah.
Oh, very much so. And it was very much where the Beatles were really starting to get stuck into that direction before Pepper.
Yeah, but it was unlike anything they'd done before, and unlike anything that was set to happen over the next year or so. So with that in mind, that's what gave him the concept for this. His one of his heroes is actually, we mentioned it before, is an illustrator called R.B. Beardsley, who was a British book illustrator.
Yeah.
Classic, wonderful work, very complex, intriguing, very detailed. And he was the role model for Klaus to do this. Now, I don't know Klaus. I've met him a couple of times, and I can say he's an absolute gentleman in that there's no ego about the guy whatsoever. As a musician, he's sensational. For anyone, you know, you check him out on the Lennon albums. He's on that. But for me, as a bass player, which is what he is, his greatest work is on stuff like he did a track for Carly Simon, You're So Vain. He was a bass player. And if you listen with headphones to the original of that and the bass introduction of that, it's like it's never been done before by anyone. Really, really great. I think he's a true bohemian original, really. And the day I met him on the photograph there, I'd gone to see him in an exhibition on Matthew Street, his exhibition. It was called Hamburg Days. And it was his paintings. His paintings are stunning as well, of what he remembered, not based on photos, just what he remembered. And I went in and I stood in a long queue, and I had a little carrier bag with revolver in it. And a friend of mine, an author, said, "There's no way he's going to sign that. There was like 1,000 people there. He's just going to..." So I said, okay. So I'm with Laney. We were waiting in the queue. And then, sure enough, we get to the front. I didn't even mention the bag. I'm trying to hide this plastic bag. And Klaus was wonderful. And I said, I I've loved your work all my life. I think it's fantastic. And he was very complimentary, and he said hello to both of us. He said, what's in the bag? And I pulled out the album, and he signed it for it. And I said to him, I've just been talking about you next door in a pub called The Grapes. And his eyebrows went up. I said, I'm with Alan Williams and Bob Wooler. And he said, show me. So there's like all these people, hundreds of people in the room, said, show me. So he took my elbow. We go down the stairs, out onto Matthew Street, which is chocker, Friday night. And we walk in The Grapes. And Bob Wooler's gone home because he and Alan had another fight, which they were famous for. And then there's a friend of ours said, get in there. And he took 3 photographs, bam, bam, bam. There you go. And that was it. They hadn't seen each other for 40 odd years.
Wow.
And it was great. So he had a few pints, and then he went back to his exhibition.
Lovely. That's a lovely little story, that is.
I think he's a lovely man, Frank.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one is kind of a album of firsts. It's not the greatest piece of artwork on the cover, as in a William Blake, but what it is this album, for me, musically as well as artistically, pushed the boundaries. Talking Heads, I think it was their 4th or 5th album, and they were known, but egos were starting to fray, the old band thing. And David Byrne, the lead singer, was starting to be a little egotistical on what happened. They brought in producer Brian Eno, who was sensational in his own right. And I'm sure he features heavily in the book, in the things you've written, Derek. But so they were forever pushing things forward. He didn't have a line of written lyric, David Byrne. They went in and they did what we now commonly know as loops, where rather like Tomorrow Never Knows, where you get something that goes all the way through a song and doesn't change, no chord changes, no changes to it. And then you change it by overdubbing. Tomorrow Never Knows is made brilliant by Ringo Starr, I think, his work on it. This album was made brilliant by experimentation. And the similar thing with the cover. They had 4 rather bland record company photographs, and the bass player Chris France and his wife, drummer Chris France and his wife Tina Weymouth, went to a university. This too is 1980, and they used the first form of digitized, what we now know as Photoshop and stuff like that. It wasn't invented then, and that's what gave the cover. The aeroplanes on the was supposed to be the front cover was the aeroplanes, which is homage to Tina Weymouth's father, who was a World War II pilot hero. The record company felt that the faces would be more suitable, so they became it. And it really is an album of firsts, and that's why I chose it.
I think it's awful myself. That's just me, though.
Yeah,
it's not. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's a bit of a trademark that is not disfigured, but distorted faces.
Yeah. Now it's everywhere. We do it on our phones. We do everything, but there's always got to be a point where it starts, you know. And again, whether it be Leonardo da Vinci or Pablo Picasso or William Blake, it starts at that point. And if it's good, then, as we know, unfortunately, it gets heavily ripped off. If anything is original for whatever reason, then it will get taken. Because there are lazy people out there, it's easier to copy and paste. But for me, I'm musically, because I was playing a lot in bands and stuff then, and painting very little. This was like a wow factor, rather like Revolver would have been in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was a bit like a wake-up call. Things were changing, and they did. But yeah, what I've got to say though, I'm sure Derek is the same, and you, Frank, is that this choosing a few of our favourite album covers to talk about, the hardest thing is what to leave out.
Exactly.
There's so many. So many.
No, of course there is, because I was asked on LF3 TV to give me, my best team, throughout the generations, and I said I think Claire Rourke was the front of the show, front of the thing, and I said it's the hardest thing is to leave out.
Yeah.
The plays you leave out.
Yeah.
And it's only what you said. And of course, on the Songs for 4K, he says, we used to mock up covers for compilation tapes in the days of cassettes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's a little comment.
Same when we were, when we were in little bands and stuff. Now this one, both Derek and I think I've chosen this. Now I kind of chose this because this came out in 1969. I think, Derek, wasn't it?
Yeah, 69.
Yeah, I remember seeing it in the record shop when I was a kid. And hand on heart, I don't own this album. But I love the band. But the 80s versions of the band was what I got into them with the with the change of lineup and stuff. But I was always fascinated, and I could not go into a record store without picking that up, just looking at it. Now it's painted by a computer programmer, friend of the chap who wrote the lyrics for the band at the time, called Barry Godbar, and he used his own face as the model by distorting a mirror, and then did it. The poignancy of it, I think it's a brilliant graphic piece of work, certainly for a prog album cover, any album cover. But is that he painted that. It's the only painting he ever did. And he died shortly after painting it of a heart attack. So I don't know if he got to see the finished album. And the way it happens in industry, I'm sure it's happened to you, Derek. I know it's happened to Frank. And my God, it's happened to me many times. You submit a piece of work to a publisher for whatever the reason is. They print it, and then your piece of work goes missing. So I've had countless artworks go missing. This went missing for years because someone in the record company had shoved it under the cupboard. And then eventually it was found, and Robert Fripp took possession of it, and it's now with him. But I just thought it was a wonderful concept, and again, different in a time when millions of albums are coming out weekly. This one, you could say that the artistry is in how the photographer, who's a very sensational photographer, Brian Duffy, no longer with us, I don't think. His son kind of controls his archives. He was a renowned photographer in the 60s and the 70s, and I think the 80s as well. And this was part of a photo shoot, but you couldn't really imagine. He would have had an idea that, whoa, this is a good one, let's go for this. But you couldn't imagine that 50 years or 50 odd years down the line, it's one of the most iconic album covers ever because of the makeup, the pose, and the starkness of it. It's just absolutely brilliant. Just
the colours, isn't it? It's the colours that grab the attention.
That lightning stripes has really become a Bowie symbol. What's interesting is this album actually came out before he was still touring the Ziggy Stardust when this album was released.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He went from alter ego Ziggy Stardust to his next alter ego Aladdin Sane, and he went from here not too long afterwards to the Thin White Duke. He seemed to avoid being David Bowie for a while. My theory is that he avoided it. He had these alter egos because he'd spent the entire 1960s unsuccessfully trying to be famous, and nearly became a one-hit wonder with Space Oddity, because it was 3 years or so before his next hit, Starman. And I'm sure in my own mind, that's what he was doing. He wanted to.
I think
he was an actor as well. I mean, I've been watching Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, recently, and he's very, very good in that.
He's great in that. And
He's a very good actor.
In that film, there's another sensational musician who we've not long lost, who was in that Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, who wrote the theme music for it. And it's a very, very moving piece of music. Ryoichi Sakamoto was a Japanese player. You would call him nowadays, regarded as a classical player, but Yellow Magic Orchestra, I think, was his band. I heard up in the 80s and stuff. But yeah, sensational the way certain projects pull people in from all over. But yeah, I think Bowie's, what you said, I totally agree with. I think he found it uncomfortable because he'd been rejected so many times.
Absolutely.
To go out and say, tonight on the Wheel Tappers and Shunters, it's David Bowie. It's like, no, it's not, you know. And a similar person to that was Peter Sellers. If you noticed, and I think it was someone like Parkinson, as someone said, when he comes on, he had a quiet word with Parkinson, and he says, listen, have you got any props? Because I can't just come on as Peter Sellers in a tie or whatever. I've got to come on as someone. So he'll put a stupid hat on or walk on with a mop or whatever. And that kind of thing with Bowie as well. And he himself said when he was touring in America with Ziggy Stardust, and he said, well, what's this all about now? And he said, it's simple. He said, this Aladdin Sane is simply Ziggy does America. And that's he moved forward.
And it's a clever play on words as well. It's Aladdin Insane.
Yeah, that was the one, yeah.
Wow. That's brilliant.
He was artistic. He was brilliant. You know, Bowie. So he's fantastic. And I think that was the beauty, the visual side of music is always I mean, nowadays it's totally different thing, and I don't get the enjoyment out of downloading tracks or CDs or any of that, but I still get a tremendous joy out of buying an album and then opening up, and the whole thing about it. It's an adventure while the music's playing. You know,
it's just so tactile. I can remember, I think Tales from Topographic Oceans is an example of it. Around that sort of time, late 60s, early 70s, I was buying 2 or 3 albums a week typically, often second hand. So you'd be browsing through record shops many a day a week. And I come across an album, like some of the covers we've looked at tonight, Death Walks Beside You. Not really knowing Atomic Rooster, thinking, oh, that looks interesting. Flick it round to the back, and then looking at the titles of the songs and possibly who's in the band, but not even who's in the band, just the titles of the songs. You get a feel for what it's going to be about. And I bought albums by bands I'd never heard of, or I'd never heard a track of it, because it just looked as though it's going to be good. And I don't ever remember being disappointed, thinking, oh, I wish I'd never bought that one. They're such a great example of, the kind of mood that you're going to get from the music and the artwork. It's such synergy there. I think.
Isn't it? I think what other people have said about the covers that we've chosen tonight, and Frank had chosen, that and which is quite right, is that the album cover reflects what you're going to listen to.
Absolutely.
And some of it is kind of haphazard and shouldn't happen, but it did. But Klaus Foreman made it his mission to do that. Sgt. Pepper totally reflects what we're going to listen to, and some of the other albums, it's like incredible. The bands themselves will see something and say, wow, that's what we want on our cover.